dictator is in office, the first thing he is likely to do is to silence opposition. They don't want anybody to remind them of their shortcomings. And so I am not surprised with what we are hearing about Said. And is that, when a leader has failed in office, he wouldn't want you to criticize him. He wouldn't want him to expose him. He wouldn't want you to tell the whole world what he's doing. And so anybody who is likely to do that is an enemy and must be put in prison. That is how dictators are known. That is their hallmark. And so when this news is coming out from Tunisia, I wasn't surprised.
So looking at the fact that Ahmed Chouad has been, a court in Tunisia has ordered for his release, some have said that this clearly looks like a cynical ploy by the president to ease international pressure, while of course keeping Tunisia on the path of the authoritarianism that he's been accused of over time. What do you also share this sentiment?
Yeah, they should sustain the pressure on him to do the right thing. Releasing one person out of many is not enough. The opposition and the human rights activists in that country, they should not rest on their oars because one lawyer has been released. Others should mount pressure on this tyrant to release other detainees so that democracy can thrive in Tunisia. It's not enough to release one person. If you release one, you must release all.
All right, then let's take this conversation to Uganda. Well, Barrister Edward, this conversation about the release of this lawyer who have already been serving a 5-year jail term following his arrest and imprisonment last year because, hey, he's been sentenced and he's been serving that term. But some have said that the judiciary in Tunisia is clearly acting from the pressure of critics. And the question now would be, why release this young man because of his health crisis? Has the rule of law been reduced to political expediencies, or are we seeing some act of what I would say a plea on the part of the family of this man?
Thank you, David. What I can say in this situation, you have seen several illustrations like this in Africa, where actually you oppose the ruling government, you become an enemy. So democracy is actually on trial. Democracy is undermined in most of our countries in Africa. So I would actually say this is already a rape of a constitution. The constitution is defied in this case. You have a right in most countries like Uganda, you are supposed to be produced to court within 24 hours for actually now be tried in the court. But in cases where you get the government is in fear, the government is actually has actually captured institutions. So there is no wonder that even the judiciary is actually acting on the command of the ruler. That is now the situation.
Well, I'm still going to stay with you, Barrister Edward, because the civil society in Tunisia has clearly said that Tunisia is at the risk of sliding back into the pre-2011 authoritarianism rule, which, of course, is something that they are trying to fight against. But from your perspective, is there a possibility that the gains of the Arab Spring is not visible afterwards? Because this, again, is a conversation that has been ongoing. Should these kind of arrests continue?
It takes a minute a country to actually fall down in situations where you get bad leaders. In this case, probably this is what Tunisia is facing right now. So it is my view that Tunisia is actually going under a trial in democracy. Has to test the constitution. Tunisia has to test the judiciary. The parliament should work, come up and actually now look at what is needed in Tunisia. So, in short, David, I see the democracy, the type of role which was actually fought, getting back to that.
Okay. All right, then let me bring the conversation back to the studio here. Well, interestingly as it stands, similar patterns of jailing critics was, of course, discovered in the Ben Ali's regime, of course, which rarely, of course, release some of these detainees. Now, the K. Said era of Tunisia occasionally releases opponents under pressure. Do you think this is a suggestive, tactical flexibility style to not be equated to the Ben Ali regime? Because some have said that Tunisia seemed not to have learned from the Arab Spring era.
I think so because some dictators they thrive on intimidation. The man believed that if he released these detainees in piecemeal, maybe after a certain pressure, he will release a sort of detainees. And then after some more pressure, he will do so. They will now see him as a listening president.
So that would definitely improve the image of Tunisia.
Exactly. In fact, his own image. Because he's not even thinking of the image of his own image. So that the international community will see him as a benevolent dictator and all that. But it is not enough. In a thriving democracy, this thing shouldn't happen. You don't imprison opponents. You don't imprison critics. If not, the whole Americans would have been in prison because of Donald Trump. I don't think we are even talking here in Africa. You need to listen to what Americans are telling Donald Trump. With all his bravado abroad, with all his showmanship abroad. At home, American used to tell him all manner of things, but he doesn't care. It's a democracy. That is what it means. But in Africa, criticize one president, he will turn into a tiger and swallow everybody.
Now, as it stands, is there the possibility that, according to the presidency, this is a major crackdown on dissent? Because you would recall Shoaib's arrest last year, of course, was widely seen as the president's crackdown on dissent, which they said was undermining the security of the country at the time. But this level of arrest was consistent and consistently seen with arrest of opposition figures, journalists, and of course, activists. On the part of the presidency now, my question is, the crackdown on dissent and of course restoring law and order in the country, is this justified by arresting oppositions, journalists, and activists as well?
Under the rule of law, it can never be justified. Arresting people because of criticizing you is the wrong move in democracy. Because democracy thrives on criticism. You cannot claim to be the perfect man when you're a leader. You must listen to critics. And if you refuse to do so, then you are turning into another thing. All those things that he's doing in Tunisia, he's just wasting his time. In fact, he is rubbishing his image. Because stories will be told later. Like we are discussing it here in Nigeria. I'm sure all over Africa, other channels of the media are talking about it. Is that a compliment? The answer is no. So the earlier you do the right thing, the better. It will not remove anything from you to listen to what? Opposition critics. It will not remove anything. So instead of you to listen to them and then take it in your stride, you now decide to jail all of them and all that. You are creating problem for yourself, very big problem. That's just the truth.
All right, then. Well, as it stands, the opposition figures in jail presently in Tunisia is increasing by the day, and hopefully the voice of the people might, prevail in the end. But let me
And this may attract the attention of the military somehow, because they have been telling you, we don't want coup in Africa, we don't want coup in Africa. By the time this thing will continue, the military will become uncomfortable, and you know what will follow.
but as it stands, do you think that the military is not even involved in this
That's what I'm saying.
with the president?
Yes, I know that, yes. But then, a section of the military, because all of them cannot be in bed with the president. A section of the military may be disgruntled, and they may use this as a weapon, as an excuse. And the majority of the people will welcome them whenever they come.
Well, that is almost inevitable because the parliament has been disbanded in the country. So, ruling by decree, anything is almost possible. Let me take the conversation to Uganda. Well, I want to talk about a story emanating from your country where centralizing the oversight of donor-funded program, the Ugandan government has barred accounting officers across ministries, departments, and agencies from entering any governance-related agreement with development partners without prior cabinet approval. Well, Barrister Edward, what's your position with this? Some have said that is Uganda's centralization of donor oversight a genuine push for sovereignty or a calculated move to choke off donor support for governance reforms and civil society activism?
Yeah, obviously, you'd actually relate to that because it is Uganda was just under the check and going through a check of elections which has just ended January. Yeah. And you saw what came out of it. So the government is a bit careful to expose itself in most of the areas. As we talk right now, in fact, the elections in Uganda are not yet accepted by all the world partners because Uganda is still questioned on how the elections were conducted. So one of the areas, obviously, the government is very much careful is the issue of finances. To tell you for sure, the partners who have been investing in Uganda heavily are not happy with what expired in January. So this is also making the government to tighten its belt because the finances may be used against the government. So that's why the government is putting such restrictions. So it is political. It is not something which is actually new to Uganda alone. Most of the governments in Africa, the dictators are always very much careful when it reaches such a level where you see your partners are supporting opposition.
Oh, well, let me bring this conversation back to the studio here. Well, question that is really got in my head right now is, why does the Ugandan government fear centralized donor engagement? Does this really expose insecurity about its governance record and accountability structure?
So that the amount will not be captured. That is just the simple truth. They don't want the amount to be captured because of the misuse they have that has been involved in this money. If the whole money is put in one basket, of course you will capture it. Then you now ask questions: where did all this money go? Who used it? What did you use it for? But when it is scattered, of course you cannot be able to capture the whole amount. That's what he's playing at. And all African leaders play these tricks. They wouldn't tell you how much foreign donors are bringing in. They will never tell you because of the misuse that they want to put it to. They will never allow you. Some of this money, some go into their own pockets. So do you want him to account for the money he put in his pocket? Do you want him to account for it? That is what happened. There's no other excuse.
So would this directive trigger donor flights? I mean, Uganda being isolated and underfunded as well.
Of course, yes. It will attract attention. So they will try somehow to cover it up and then reassure the donor agencies and all that They might even put up a phantom project and tell you this is where they put it and all that. But was that the purpose? Most time when donor agencies give you money, it is targeted at a project. And so when you are not ready to pursue that project, you are going to misuse the money. And when they ask you, you now put up one excuse or the other, just to confuse them and divert their attention.
So as it stands, if should this trigger donor flights and the economy is underfunded or some part of the economy is underfunded, how much of an impact would this have on the Ugandan people?
They don't care. David, why do you think Africa is underdeveloped? Most of the money are in foreign banks and all that. Hey, David, half of the money of Africans are in foreign accounts, no thanks to their leaders. If you should repatriate all the money that leaders have stolen from Africa, Africa will be a paradise. That's just the simple truth. So they wouldn't want such thing to be exposed. They secretly do business with this money and all that, and then keep it abroad.
All right, then let me take this conversation to Uganda. Well, Barrister Edward, as it stands now, the government of your country tightening grip on donor governance. Some have said that this is marking a major beginning of a broader trend in Africa, because this is just like Barrister Aguma also said here. There is the conversation surrounding the fact that some of these governments are weaponizing sovereignty to silence reforms. What's your position with this as well?
Yeah, very true. The government is trying its best to silence the so-called the partners, because ideally when a project has started, just as Council has said in our studio, that money is supposed to go directly to support that project. But when you bring issues like you should have books up, check the books first before it is dispersed. Now it starts a questioning yourself. The government has failed in most of the projects. So we don't know how the government will now manage even these donor funds. Yes, the government should have accountability of every money which comes to which enters to the central bank. That is true. And we know this money is channeled through a very good open and transparency means. So you can still, as a government, get the information. So this one is totally aimed in drawing some kind of lines on the issues of actually controlling whatever is happening in the country. There is a lot of issues concerning even the person who was elected recently is not safe. It feels like he's not safe. The son is not also feeling safe. That's why you see the issue any kind of a statement. So I believe the intentions are not good for Ugandans. The intentions are just to try and now try to cover the corruption which is too much rampant in the country.
All right, then. Let me just stay with you and, of course, move up to another conversation before we just wrap this up, maybe in 1 minute. The South African government has called on the United Nations member states to recognize Palestinian statehood and act in solidarity with Palestinian people. Well, Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola told in a meeting of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, Switzerland, that the world cannot continue to appeal for an end to Israel's unlawful occupation, an end to the ongoing genocide, together with efforts to permanently displace the Palestinian people. What do you make of this consistent vocal nature of the South African government, particularly in the part of the Palestinians, as against Israel? A move that Washington is not finding funny afterwards.
If the process is followed and so that the request is so much and dire, I believe that we actually feel recognition is something which should be done as per the law. Now, if it is it's done in the right procedures. These people are to be recognized. Then I don't see any situation. But also we look at the security part of it. It may bring issues. That is how I look at it.
All right, then let me bring it back to the studio. Implications of this statement. Some have said Washington is already not in good business with South Africa, but Pretoria is still consistently talking and asking the UN to take a major stance as concerning the statehood of Palestine. What's your position with this?
The only thing that is driving the consistency from South Africa is their experience with apartheid. What South Africa went through in apartheid, they're liking it to what Israel is doing to Palestinians in Gaza. So when they remember what they went through and what they suffered, they are now in solidarity with the people of Palestinians.
But some have said that this is oversimplifying the comparison here.
In what way?
Well, in the fact that the Israel-Palestinian conflict might just not be the same toll with the apartheid that South Africa saw.
That's what I'm telling you. I said they're liking it too. Because during apartheid, yes, we know that it was more horrendous in South Africa. But they're liking it to what they went through.
Okay.
There is no other explanation for you to occupy another person's land and then impose your will on that person. You know, you are the one managing everything. You don't allow them to be free. You don't allow them to do things that, you know, and this is a country that's supposed to be a sovereign nation. And if you go to the history of this thing proper, the Palestinians were there before the Israelites came in. And so there is every reason for the whole world, not just South Africa, the whole world to come in solidarity with the people of Palestine so that there will be peace for once. There should be peace for once. After all, if you check the size of this place we are talking about, yes, they can make a deal and then accommodate each other and still live in peace.
All right, then. Because of our time, really, this is where we have to draw anchor on the analysis segment of the African News. We've been talking with Darlington Agomo, a lawyer and public and political affairs analyst and commentator. Thank you so very much for being here.
My pleasure.
Also, all the way from Uganda, joined us virtually, Barrister Edward Okwaro Matakinye, a human rights activist.